Her brother walked out of the courthouse in comfort with $1,180,000. Della Harper walked out with one rusted key to a dance hall nobody had opened since 1994. She was 27. She had $84 in the bank and a truck she slept in. The hall stood open to the weather on Sisterdale Road, its cypress floor buckled, its tin shutters hanging by one hinge. Her sister Nell called it a shed with a roof and a tax bill. "Nobody has danced out there since Reagan," Elmer said. "Let the county take it." The county never got it. 4 months later, a trunk taken down from above that stage would be valued at $1,469,000. Neither Elmer nor Nell would ever see a dollar of it. Elmer was 34 and sold office buildings in San Antonio. He wore a platinum watch and set his phone face up on every table. Screen first, family second. Nell was 31, managed a hotel in Austin, and said the word liability the way people say it when they have practiced it in the car. Neither of them had been out to the hall since the funeral. Mabel Harper had called the dances there for 41 years. She died in the ticket booth in the spring of 1994, and nobody unlocked the gate after that. Johnson grass came up through the cypress boards. Wasps took the ticket booth. Della had grown up under that stage, asleep on flour sacks while the fiddles ran until 2 in the morning. She was 9 years old the last time her grandmother handed her a pen and told her to write her whole name, slowly. She had not thought about that once in 18 years. On the second night, she climbed the ladder behind the bandstand to see whether the roof was worth saving. Her lamp caught the corner of something square and zinc-lined, pushed far back under the eave where the rain could never reach it. Somebody had put it exactly where the water ran off. Who hides a trunk from the rain and not from thieves? The long oak table, in the wood-paneled room in comfort, was cold. Della Harper sat at the very end, her gray wool jacket buttoned tight against the draft. Her boots, speckled with white paint from a ceiling job in Borneo, were tucked beneath her chair. On the other side of the room, Elmer sat with his phone face up on the polished wood. Nell sat next to him, her camel coat draped over her shoulders, her fingers turning a gold hoop earring. Warren Keller did not look up when he opened the first blue folder. He was 81 years old, his vest worn thin at the elbows, his reading glasses hanging from a black cord. He read the estate inventory in a flat, even voice that sounded like a catalog of things already lost. The river house on the Guadalupe River went first. It was a 2-story limestone home with a deep porch and 3 acres of cypress shade. Elmer nodded once. $1,180,000, Nell read from the tax assessment sheet on her lap. She looked at Elmer, then at the lawyer. "That is the current valuation. The liability is minimal." "It goes to Elmer and Nell," Warren Keller said, his pen scratching the corner of the page. "Divided equally, as specified in the amendment from 1999. Then came the 2 commercial lots on Main Street in Comfort. Then the 5% share in the Austin Hotel. Finally, the 1972 Buick Electra that had belonged to their grandmother Mabel. Every piece of paper was signed, stamped, and settled. Della looked down at her hands. She had $84 left in her bank account, a sum she had earned painting 3 bedrooms for a rancher's wife. She slept in the cab of her truck parked behind the gas station, and she had no address to write on the registry. The truck was a 1981 vehicle, with a rusted tailgate and an engine that knocked when it ran hot. She had no house, no land, and no share in the family business. Elmer had a 3-story brick house in San Antonio and 2 office buildings on the north side of the city. Nell had a modern condominium in Austin, with a view of the river. Della had her brushes, 3 wooden ladders, and the copper paint pot. She kept her paint-splattered overalls in a wooden crate in the truck bed, next to a 5-gallon bucket of dry plaster. That is the end of the real property, Nell said. She closed her leather notebook with a sharp snap. The rest is just the Sisterdale Road property. The county has been sending notices since the funeral. The back taxes on the Sisterdale Road property amount to $4,210, Nell said, her voice sharp and clear. That is more than the timber is worth. The cedar trees are too small to cut, and the cypress floor has been wet since the storm. The county will sell it at auction in 3 months, Elmer added. We have no reason to carry the debt. Warren Keller adjusted his glasses. The will states that Della has 90 days to accept the deed. If she does not sign, the hall will go to the sheriff's sale. The Sisterdale property is Harper Hall, Warren Keller said. It is a roofless shed, Elmer said, his screen lighting up with a message from San Antonio. He did not pick it up, but his hand moved close to it. The roof is half gone. The taxes have not been paid in 7 years. The hall was established in 1898, Warren Keller said, his voice dropping an octave. Nobody has danced out there in 7 years, Nell said. It is a liability, Warren. We are not paying the back taxes on a rotting hall. Della, the old lawyer said. He did not look at Nell. He pulled a thin manila folder from the very bottom of his leather briefcase. It was tied with a piece of faded green ribbon, the paper yellowed at the edges. This is yours. Under the main will, the Sisterdale Road property, including the building known as Harper Hall and the 53 cedar posts it stands upon, is left to you. Elmer laughed. You can have the hall, Della. It is a tax bill and some old wood. Let the county take it. Della did not answer. She took the folder from Warren Keller's hand. The paper felt heavy, thick with the smell of old dust and dry cedar. Her name was written on the tab in her father Oscar's handwriting, large and steady. The deeds are inside, Warren Keller said. He closed his briefcase and stood up, his joints making a dry clicking sound in the quiet room. Elmer and Nell were already at the door, their keys jingling, their minds already back in San Antonio and Austin. They left the room, their leather shoes clicking down the marble hallway. Della stayed in her chair. The room smelled of old paper, floor wax, and the cold winter air coming through the sash. She did not open the folder yet. She watched the old lawyer walk to the window. Outside, the bare branches of the oak trees rattled in the wind. He had kept that folder in his bottom drawer for 15 years, and he had never once mentioned it. The room was very quiet after the door closed. Della looked at the manila folder in her lap, then up at Warren Keller. He stood by the tall window, looking out at the gravel parking lot. They are in a hurry, Della said. They have offices to open, the lawyer replied. He turned around, his boots scraping the pine floor. He walked back to the oak table and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a heavy object and set it on the wood between them. It was a brass ticket stamp, its handle dark and smooth from decades of skin oil. Engraved on the side in deep, hand-cut letters was the name Harper, 1898. Next to it, he placed a small square envelope sealed with 3 drops of dark green wax. Your father left these with me in 1994, the week after Mabel died, Warren Keller said. He never told me, Della said. He was a silent man, Keller replied. He sat down opposite her, his voice very low, the sound barely carrying across the empty room. He gave me 3 instructions for you, Della. You must follow them exactly, in the order he gave them. He spent years waiting for this day, and he was very specific. What are they? Della asked. First, the lawyer said, pointing a thin finger at the envelope. Do not sell the old violin in the cabin of your truck. No matter how many bills you have, and no matter how cold the winter gets, keep the instrument. It is the only thing that cannot be replaced. Della nodded. The violin had belonged to Mabel. It was in a worn canvas case behind the seat of her truck, the wood smelling of old varnish, sheep gut, and dried pine rosin. Second, Keller continued, his voice steady, go to the bank in Comfort tomorrow morning. Ask the manager for box number 9. You do not need a key. Just give them your name and tell them you have the green wax. Your father opened that box in 1983, paying the rent 30 years in advance. The bank manager is a man named Calvin Foster. He was a boy when Mabel called the dances, and he remembers the sound of the waltzes. He will know what you are looking for. And the third? Find the old man near the river before the September festival, Keller said. He lives in the limestone cabin near the Guadalupe River. He is 86 years old, and he is the last man who remembers how the cypress floor of the hall was laid. He knows the secret of the 53 cedar posts. Della touched the cold brass of the ticket stamp. The green wax on the envelope was hard and thick, the color of pine needles. What is in here, Warren? She asked. That is for you to read when you are at the hall, Keller replied. Do not open it in the town. Open it where the cypress boards can hear you. Your grandmother Mabel always said that the hall has a memory of its own, and some words only make sense when you are standing under the rafters. Why did he wait so long? Della asked. He wanted you to be 27, the lawyer said. He told me that a person does not understand the sound of a building until they have lived through some silence of their own. He stood up and picked up his leather briefcase. Della watched his hands, old and dry, the fingers slightly curved from years of turning pages. If you are still with Della on this quiet road, subscribe for a new story every week. Play something before you decide anything, he said, and he put his hat on. Della walked out of the courthouse with the key and the heavy brass stamp in her pocket. The winter air was sharp, smelling of cedar smoke and dry limestone hills. She walked to her truck, a 1981 model, with a dented blue fender and white paint splinters on the floor mats. She had lived in the cab of this truck, sleeping on a wool blanket behind the steering wheel. Her paint rollers, brushes, and 5-gallon cans of latex primer were stacked in the bed under a canvas tarp. For 4 years, she had painted the limestone houses of Comfort and the ranch homes of Kendall County. She knew the texture of every plaster wall, the way the cedar boards absorbed the first coat of oil, and the way the sun dried the white paint. She was a seasonal painter, working when the weather was dry and the ranchers had extra cash. She did not mind the work. It was quiet, and it paid enough for gas and cornmeal. Silence was something she understood. Her mother had passed away in 1988, after a 7-month illness that left the house smelling of rubbing alcohol and vinegar. Della was 15 then. She had spent every afternoon after school sitting by the bed, holding her mother's hand and listening to the dry, rattling breath. When the funeral was over, Oscar had closed the door to the master bedroom and never opened it again. He moved his cot into the kitchen, next to the stove, and lived there for 13 years in absolute quiet. After that, her father Oscar had stopped speaking. He did not speak out of anger, but out of a quiet that settled over the kitchen like dust. Della had counted once. He spoke fewer than 300 words a year for 14 years. He would point at the coffee pot, or nod toward the garden, or write a grocery list on the back of a receipt. He died in 2001, without ever explaining the silence. They lived together in the small frame house near the river, 2 silent people moving through the rooms like water. The only sound had been the violin. Mabel had started Della on the instrument when she was 5. For 11 years, Della played every Saturday afternoon in the ticket booth, while her grandmother called the waltzes. She learned to read the black notes on the yellowed paper before she learned to read the school books. She had played until her fingers had small brown calluses, her left ear always tuned to the high, sweet ring of the E string. Then, in 1990, when she was 16, she stopped. There had been no argument, no broken wood. She had simply looked at the 53 cedar posts of Harper Hall one evening, watched the dust motes falling through the light, and realized the music had stopped making sense. The dances were smaller then, the old people were dying, and the young people were driving to San Antonio. She had put the violin in the case in 1990, and had not opened the case since. The case was wrapped in a green army blanket behind the seat of the truck, right next to the jack and the spare tire. It was a heavy, silent presence that she carried through every painting job, from Born to Comfort, through 4 years of dust and paint fumes. She had never once touched the brass latches. Della drove the truck down Sisterdale Road. The tires crunched on the gravel lane of Harper Hall. The building stood under 3 ancient live oaks, its tin shutters hanging crooked, its long shingled roof sagging in the middle. It looked like a gray ghost in the winter twilight. She stopped the engine. She took the key from the ignition, her fingers tracing the rust on the iron. She walked up the 3 wooden steps to the dance floor. She sat down on the edge of the porch and pulled off her heavy leather boots. She walked barefoot across the cypress boards. The wood was cold, but it was solid under her feet. She could feel the slight curve of the planks. The places where the heels of 10,000 boots had worn the cypress smooth during 40 years of Saturday night waltzes. She walked all the way to the bandstand, her toes finding the small gaps where the cedar posts met the floor. The timber ladder behind the stage was rough, the cedar bark still sticking to the sides. She climbed up 9 feet, her lantern casting long shadows across the empty rafters. Pushed far back under the eave, where the metal roof met the cedar wall, she found the zinc-lined trunk, its corners reinforced with iron. The padlock was small and red with rust. Della tapped it with the handle of her pocket knife, and the shackle crumbled into dust. She lifted the heavy lid. The smell of cedar shavings, dry paper, and old beeswax rose into the cold rafters. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and tied with faded red ribbon, were stacks of sheet music. Every page was written in brown ink, the notes neat and round, signed at the bottom in a beautiful hand. Gilbert Harper. Della touched the first page. It was a waltz dated 1888. Beneath it was a polka from 1912. There were 140 tunes in all. She read the waltz dated 1888. The notes were written in thick, dark brown ink that had not faded under the zinc lid. Gilbert Harper had written small instructions in the margins. Play with a light touch. Let the 3/4 time breathe. Do not rush the turn. She could see his fingers on the paper, the pen scratching by the light of a kerosene lamp in the cold winter of 1898. She took the first stack and climbed down. She walked to the old ticket booth, where the telephone was mounted on the wall. She dialed Warren Keller's home number. The old lawyer answered on the 3rd ring. "Warren," she said, her voice echoing in the wooden booth. "I found it, above the bandstand." "The zinc trunk?" he asked. "Yes. It is full of music, handwritten pages, 140 waltzes and polkas." There was a long silence on the line. Then Della heard the clicking of a transfer. "Della, I have a woman in Austin on the other line," Keller said. "I sent her the descriptions your father wrote before he died. Listen to her." Another voice came on, clear and sharp. "Della, my name is Sarah. Your father sent us the index of those papers 15 years ago. If those are the original hand-copied manuscripts of Gilbert Harper, the historical value is immense. The copies alone are worth $300,000, and that is before anyone plays them. The historical significance of this collection cannot be overstated, Della. Your grandfather wrote these waltzes when Kendall County was young, and no other record exists." Della held the receiver against her ear. The number seemed too large to fit inside the quiet ticket booth. $300,000, the woman said. And then she asked Della to play it again. into the phone. Della did not answer. She hung up the receiver. She walked back to her truck and took the violin case from behind the seat. The latches clicked open in the cold air. She tightened the bow, her hand trembling slightly in the chill. The first note was scratchy, the string out of tune after years of silence. But as her fingers found the old shape, the sound rose into the empty rafters of Harper Hall, clean and sweet. She sat down on the buckled cypress with the trunk open across her knees and played the first 16 bars out loud, badly, to 53 cedar posts and nobody else. Her grandmother had not left her a building. She had left her the sound the building was built to hold. If you want to follow Della as she uncovers the remaining secrets of the ledger, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. We bring you these quiet stories of American history every week. Thank you for listening. Until we meet again on the next quiet road.